So the conference of the parties is well on the way. The conference number 26. So these parties have met 26 times before and have attempted to find solutions to the climate change problems around the world. It's a global problem. The climate is changing. Now, I've seen some interesting studies on it, and I could say I am pretty qualified in this. My area of study was environmental science, but it's one of those things that obeying the science becomes a bit difficult, because you could get science to back up nearly anything you have. And one of the problems that some people who have their critiques of climate change have is that some of the models that are created to show the drastic changes in climate that we are forecasting, some of those models are created by people who have incentive to create drastic models. People who make more money if the models tell a certain story. And I'd like to believe that all scientists are fully honest and are just dealing in pure facts and straight facts only, but I think we all know that who pays the piper does have some say on the tune. And then when you combine that with a lot of the ideas and actions that you see governments and business people taking, the line that you see them going down on and saying that the purpose they are doing this is to cure climate change and to fix climate change, and you see an obvious benefit to them or theirs through the means they have intended, it seems a bit fishy. So you have some debatable results that are debatable. Regardless of what you hear, there's always debate in science. Anyone that is attempting to give you a settled science kind of science isn't really doing science right. Science is difficult to be settled because science is more of a process than a theory or theology. Some people have science as a modern day religion and that's how they do it, but actual science isn't something so settled. But either way, our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, had his chance to speak in the conference of the parties, and he had his chance to speak. And we are going to go through some of the things he said and see if we could tie everything together, because there has been some interesting news coming out of Scotland, out of Glasgow. And when you look at the particulars of what is going on around this conference on climate change, and you see the glaring hypocrisy already, it doesn't bode well for the future, especially thinking that these are the people who are supposed to be making the decisions for the entire world. As Mia Mottley spoke about, these are the people that we have intended for global leadership. They are the people we want to lead us into this more environmentally sustainable kind of living, and a lot of them aren't really practicing what they preach quite as yet. And speaking of Mia Mottley, I saw quite a few people giving large praise, good big ups to Mia Mottley. They really like her. I saw some people speaking about she has their vote for leader of the Caribbean, the whole region. I saw a page, in fact, say that we would be willing, Trinidad and Tobago, to exchange all 41 of our MPs for one Mia Amor Mottley. And I understand the sentiment, because the lady can speak. She understands how to bring across a point. She does it convincingly well. But a lot of the people that speak about wanting Miss Mottley as their leader, a lot of them, if you're keeping up with them, if they're people that you know, a lot of them are UNC supporters. They lean more to the side of the opposition party in Trinidad and Tobago. And when you consider what the UNC is, in nature, their political ideology. I know in Trinidad and Tobago, political ideology is rarely ever spoken about. It's more about just who you for and who you not for. It's all tribalism. But if you try to dig a little deeper and peep into the political ideology of the parties, the UNC leans more to the populist side. Populist meaning what the people want. We are for the people. You'd hear the UNC and their representatives speak about the people and what the people want very regularly. That's more to the populist side. And if you follow world politics, you'd understand that populism and globalism are kind of on opposite sides of that spectrum. And Mia Amor Mottley is much more of a globalist. She speaks about global integration into problem solving, while most populists want what we as a group, our specific group with our specific culture and social norms, we want our thing to continue. That's kind of the nature of populism. So I think that's being a bit disingenuous, because if they did get Miss Motley, I don't think they'd really approve of the decisions that Miss Motley wants to make. And to be frank, a lot of Barbadian COVID lockdown policies and protocols are pretty similar to Trinidad. I don't think they have things all that much more free like some people would like to believe. I guess the grass on the other side regularly does look greener. Anyway, click that like button if you haven't done that yet. Click it or tap it if you have a phone, because there may not be any clicking done where you're watching this. However you do it, make sure that like button is secured. And if you have something to say, drop a comment. I do like to hear what you have to say. And if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. There are more videos coming. So let's get into what Dr. Rowley actually said. This article is from The Guardian, Thursday, November 4th. PM Rowley, TNT feeling effects of climate change. As an economy largely based on oil and gas and petrochemicals, Trinidad and Tobago is transitioning over reasonable and manageable time to net zero and has set very ambitious targets aimed at diversifying. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said in his statement at the COP26 World Leaders Summit in Edinburgh, Scotland earlier today. Well, I guess he wasn't in Glasgow, he was in Edinburgh. Very ambitious targets aimed at diversifying. Now, I am struggling to see exactly how we're going to diversify, because this isn't the first government or the first prime minister to speak about diversifying. I believe I made a contemplation on this a couple months ago. Every leader in Trinidad and Tobago speaks about diversifying, because even before the climate discussions came up, it's pretty obvious if all your eggs are in one basket, if that basket happens to fall, then all your eggs break. And all of our financial eggs, well, not all, but the vast majority of them have been inside of this oily basket for quite some time. And everyone speaks about diversifying and diversifying. But I think one of the problems is that when you have old money already linked into the system as it is, it could be a bit difficult to attempt to change that system, and changing that system could allow other people to get in. So personally, it could sound a bit skeptical and cynical on my side, but I find regularly you see that before governments make a big change that could disturb the normal modus operandi of something, that they'd signal it long enough and leave it in waiting long enough that those in the older money categories would be able to secure the market before it could really be expanded. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. Trinidad and Tobago decriminalized marijuana, was it this year? And it was noted on the decriminalization of marijuana that there was a marijuana company already registered in Trinidad. A company, I believe, if I remember my news correctly, I believe that company had links to the present Attorney General. So it could seem a bit suspicious. Trinidad has not legalized the cultivation and sale of marijuana yet, but there already is a company registered, seeming like they have intentions of doing that. And I believe the company is registered with a Caribbean-wide name, Caribbean Cannabis something, I believe it was. So you see what I mean, that it seems, it could be me being a cynic. You could comment and tell me if it seems like that to you. But it does seem like many times before the government makes such big changes, they have to make sure the familiars could get their positions at the top secured first. Anyway, he said this country, a small island developing state, is already experiencing the effects of climate change. Loss and damage are already clear in the aggressive erosion of our coastline and the bleaching of our coral reefs. Tackling loss and damage must remain a critical and core issue of any global climate action framework. We are increasingly concerned about our ability to address this issue given the well-known difficulty in accessing financing for such projects. We need funds like the Green Climate Fund to establish specific streams for loss and damage finance to ensure that this is prioritized in the same way as mitigation and adaptation. So he's speaking about we need financing to establish specific funds like streams for loss and damage. So what has already been lost or damaged, you would need financing for that. And he's speaking about that as opposed to just mitigation and adaptation technologies. Dr. Rowley said the announcement from the United States that it would double its climate finance support was particularly inspiring. This is the type of bold action all donor countries need to consider in the weeks ahead. The mobilization of private finance will also be critical for securing the urgently needed investment, particularly for the transformation of our energy sectors, he said. Now, personally, I don't care for any money from the United States. I do, but here's why I'm saying it in such a generalized manner. The United States is in trillions of dollars of debt, and how they make money to give you is they literally make the money. Now, I've said this over and over, but I'll say it again. When you're plugged into a global system and you have the people at the top of the global system printing money at will, what they're doing every time they print money is they're stealing the resources from people who actually have to create resources and give them the resources in exchange for these dollars so that they can then go now and purchase oil and gas for it. So it's the irony above ironies. The US dollar is so powerful because of the hydrocarbon industry, because of those fossil fuels, and because of that, we now want to use this US dollar to fund getting us out of this hydrocarbon monopoly. That seems like it may not work necessarily how we expect it to. I'm just supposing here. The Prime Minister also detailed TNT's plans to reduce emissions and build climate resilience. These include, so these are the plans for Trinidad and Tobago. These are the things that are more up our lane. Establishing the largest utility-scale solar renewable energy project in the Caribbean with a capacity of 112 megawatts, accounting for 10% of the country's power needs. This will be increased to 30% by 2030. I have no problem with that. I'd like to see it implemented. But before it's implemented, I'd like to see how it will be implemented. I want to see who gets the contract, who brings in those solar panels, who installs those solar panels, who maintains those solar panels, and what price are we going to pay for all parts of that? Because here's one of the problems I have with a lot of governments. It's easy to speak about rich people and taking their money, and many people don't have a problem with that. Let's take the money from the rich. Okay, fine. And it's easy to speak about doing good things with the money. So we're taking the money from the rich and we're going to do good things with the money. Okay, fine. But what are those good things? How exactly are they going to happen? Are we just supposed to trust that we leave this to our appointed leaders and we give them as much money as they ask for, and of course they are always going to do just as we expect? Other than the solar facility, also in the planning we have development of an e-mobility policy and implementation of measures to phase in electric vehicles, and that's already on the way, where they have reduced the tax on electric vehicles, less than 2 years old. Other than that, they have development of a just transition of workforce policy aimed at reskilling, retooling, and developing new capacity for low carbon economy. In other words, if you were employed in an industry that used high amounts of carbon and it's deemed as not being sustainable, they're planning a policy to implement a policy that would retrain you for a new job in a much lower carbon industry. Again, that's a great idea, but the implementation is where things get dicey. And finally, introduction of measures to facilitate investment in green hydrogen to provide green feedstock to the vibrant petrochemical industry. There are plans to explore the use of industry-generated carbon dioxide in possible carbon sequestration projects. All of these are grand plans, but that's just the problem. Are they only plans? We've heard plans before. Politicians are really good at giving generalized, good sounding plans, but implementation has nearly always been sorely lacking. And we're going to go through some of the implementation of one of the largest government type groups in the world, the UN itself. The group that kind of has its hand in planning and leading this whole COP26 climate change summit, who has its hand in leading and pushing the global change to decrease the carbon dioxide levels in our atmosphere. They're at the head of that. So let's see how they use resources. From Daily Mail, Hypocrite Airways, Jeff Bezos' £48 million Gulfstream leads parade of 400, you heard correctly, 400 private jets into COP26, including Prince Albert of Monaco, scores of royals and dozens of green CEOs, as huge traffic jam forces empty planes to fly 30 miles to park. Mail Online watched as plane after plane of dignitaries landed in Glasgow and Edinburgh for COP26 meeting. Prince Albert of Monaco was among those choosing to fly private, according to an analysis of flight records. Bank of America, which in PR documents boasts of its commitment to sustainability, owned one of the jets. Prince Charles is among those traveling by non-commercial plane from G20 in Rome. Mail Online can reveal. So, first up is hypocrisy. Now, hypocrisy could be said to be a very human trait. That hypocrisy is as human as breathing. But here's the problem with that. I have no problem with someone being a hypocrite if they don't really have any power over what I do. You could be a hypocrite with your own things anytime you want. But when we have people meeting at a summit, at a convention, at a conference, where they're discussing how to make decisions that affect everyone in the world, and some of those decisions would affect you very directly in the vehicle you drive. Your car that you drive, it belches out about 4 tons of carbon dioxide per year. That's quite a bit. It's not good for the environment. We have known for some time carbon dioxide can cause heating in our environment, and too much of it is a bad thing. So, okay, we want to get you to reduce that 4 tons of carbon dioxide every year. Do you know how much a jet plane, a private jet, releases? About 2 tons every hour. So, these 400 planes that flew in, each one of them in that one trip from wherever they came from, landed in the airport, and then they had to fly 30 miles away just to get a park because there was so much traffic from private jets. These aircraft use 2 tons of carbon dioxide, or release rather, 2 tons of carbon dioxide every hour. So within that time frame of where they move there, very likely they may have used upwards of 2 years or 3 years even of carbon dioxide emissions from your car. But don't worry. If we can all stop what we're doing and drive those electric vehicles, then maybe they could continue living like that. And it would all make sense in the world. I mean, they need to travel around in these private jets because they have very important decisions to be made. Yes. Yes. And what adds insult to a lot of this is that many of the times people in these positions are spending other people's money. Many of these UN bureaucrats are experts. They have spent their entire lives spending other people's money. And if you think about it, these people are not some special superhuman people. And if you think about regular human behavior, think about someone you know and how generally people move when they're spending other people's money than when they're spending their own. I always look at the way politicians manage money, and many of the politicians have businesses of their own, and I am 100% certain they do not manage their own business the way they manage public business. But it's not their money they're spending. On that note, the head of a certain section in the UN that is in charge of feeding people around the world. That's a very important thing. They are starving poor, especially children, around the world that need food. And there is a part of the UN that seeks to feed them. And that part of the UN issued a call to the world's billionaires. They told the world's billionaires that just a fraction of your money could solve world poverty, could fix it. All they need is just a fraction. And remember what I just said. Many people have no problem in taking money from rich people. It seems fair. They have so much extra. The least they could do is give some to us. And many people have no problem in feeding the poor. That's a really good issue. So when you frame it as, why don't the billionaires just give us money to feed the poor? It makes sense, and you get a lot of people on your side, but they don't go into the nitty-gritty of it. How exactly does this happen? How does $6 billion from Elon Musk reach to poor, hungry children? You see, the actual reality is that money doesn't go to the poor, hungry children. It goes to rich bureaucrats, experts at spending other people's money for many times their entire lives. And many times, when you look at it, for every $1 spent, it might be 1 cent getting to the actual poor, hungry children. And Elon Musk raised this issue because he replied, when they asked him about if he could give, he replied to them. Elon Musk tweets he is willing to spend $6 billion to fight world hunger on one condition. After being name-dropped by a UN official who said that just a small percentage of a fortune like Elon Musk's $300 billion could help solve world hunger, the Tesla CEO tweeted his own challenge, explain how $6 billion will fix the problem, and he'll sell Tesla stock right now. On October 26, David Beasley, the director of UN's World Food Program, told CNN that it was time for the ultra-wealthy to step up now on a one-time basis. $6 billion to help 42 million people that are literally going to die if we don't reach them. It's not complicated, he said, specifically mentioning Musk and Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, the two richest men in the world. On Sunday, Musk tweeted, if WFP can describe on this Twitter thread exactly how $6 billion will solve world hunger, I will sell Tesla stock right now, he said about Beasley's assertion. In a follow-up tweet, Musk added that the UN's plan must include open source accounting so the public sees precisely how the money is spent. Beasley responded to Musk's tweet a few hours later, offering to be on the next flight to you and saying that the executive can throw him out if he doesn't like what he hears. Now, bear in mind, that is not what Musk asked for. He didn't ask for you to be on the next flight to see him. That flight costs money. Don't spend the money. Remember, we need all the money for the starving poor children in sub-Saharan Africa. This rich white man says, pay attention, and he doesn't want to send how they're going to spend the money on a public forum. No, he wants to meet in a one-on-one with Elon Musk and explain to him, and then it would happen. No, that was not actually what was requested. Beasley also said that while the $6 billion figure wouldn't solve world hunger, it will prevent global political instability, mass migration, and save 42 million people on the brink of starvation. CNN had erroneously reported that the money would solve world hunger, but later corrected its headline to say it would help solve it. And here's the thing. Is that really an error? Or was it a play on emotional words that all Elon Musk, this very rich man, needs to do? The same thing I said. No one minds taking money from the very wealthy. So they framed it like all the very wealthy needs to do is just this, and we would solve this massive problem. And who could disagree with that? But from the moment things start to get more specific, they start to get more general. Well, it wouldn't actually solve it. It would help. How exactly would it help is the question he is asking. Musk replied by asking Beasley to publicly publish the organization's current and proposed spending in detail. Sunlight is a wonderful thing, Musk wrote. And I agree. Now, I don't want to be a cheerleader for someone who's worth $300 billion. They don't need any free cheerleaders. If he wants to spend some money on me cheerleading, well, I may don a pom-pom. Just kidding. But what he is saying there is making sense. And it isn't just a matter of in the UN and the World Food Program. This is about governments all around the world, because this is something they always speak about: property tax. You're paying property tax based on the size of your property. So if your property tax in Trinidad and Tobago is large, that means you're a wealthy person and you can afford to pay that money. Okay, maybe I can afford it, but what are you going to do with the money? Oh, we're going to help the needy. Okay, explain to me specifically, with small words and large numbers, how exactly would this happen? It almost is never explained because they don't have an explanation. Now listen to this. Musk went on. In a separate tweet, Musk shared a link to a 2015 Express report alleging the UN peacekeepers were sexually abusing children in the Central African Republic in 2014, adding the comment, "What happened here?" And that story is gruesome. I post, as usual, the links in the description. If you want to read the details, you can go in. It's from express.co.uk. Starving children as young as 9 forced to give UN officials oral sex to get food. And this is what that $6 billion pays for. So if they take your money and spend it sending peacekeepers to give food in the Central African Republic, is this what your money pays for? And bear in mind, if you read through the article, no one was arrested for this. No one was prosecuted for this. They went on with their lives. And this isn't the only place that has happened. In Haiti, Haiti has something like 13 billion been donated to Haiti in the last 10 years. 1 decade, $13 billion. That's more than $1 billion US per year being donated to Haiti. Haiti has 11 million people. We are in the Caribbean. We see what is going on in Haiti. Can you see 13 billion worth of resources spent in Haiti? And the horrible actions of the UN peacekeepers who are there to keep the peace and help the people isn't secluded only to the Central African Republic, because the UN peacekeepers who went to Haiti decimated Haiti's young women. They left them pregnant with children and left the country. So you went into the country. You would have taken, let's suppose Elon Musk paid that $6 billion before, and they took some of that $6 billion to sponsor some of these people to go down to Haiti. And when they reached to Haiti, they abused these women. I would like to call that forced. I may call that rape, because in the situation with the positions that they are both in, with hungry, starving, desperate people, and you being in a position as supposedly the helper and savior, that's a very vulnerable position to have someone. I think they are victims. The women who had children for these peacekeepers are victims. And you tell me what happens in a very poor country when a large section of women are left as single mothers. You tell me. And tell me if it makes sense to keep blindly donating to these groups. And then we could draw that down, and possibly you could tell me if it even makes sense sometimes to even pay taxes. Tell me what you think. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think. That's all I have for now. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained. And click that like button if you haven't done that yet, and stay tuned. I'll see you in the next video.